Hello, my name's Dr. Morag Findlay and welcome to this webinar about getting into physics. I think we're probably waiting for a couple of minutes for people to start. So while doing that, I'll just briefly talk to you about the webinar. I can't see anything. I'm seeing myself on the screen. I can't see you. I can't hear you. So if you do have any questions as you go along, can you type them into the Q&A rather than the chat? And then my colleague Leah and Neil will join us after I finish the presentation, and then we'll answer. I'll stop doing the presentation like this and we'll answer any questions that you might have. So this is your chance to think of questions that you want to ask about getting into physics teaching. So I'd intended to sort of welcome people in and say hi to individuals, but since I can't see you, I can't do that. But it's good that you're here. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate you considering us because we know that you have a wide range of options. And we hope that you'll seriously consider physics teaching at Strathclyde, because I think you'd find it's a good option, but obviously you choose the option that's best for you. So remember, if you've got any questions, could you put them into the Q&A, please? I'm going to talk until 15:32, just to give people a chance to join in, so we're not having to go back. I think one thing I would say at this point is, although it says physics there, the title of the PGDE you would be applying for is physics with science, because in Scotland, physics, chemistry and biology teachers are all teachers of broad general education science in 1st to 3rd year. So there's a big element of that in the course, and it's important that you're aware of that, because the reality is, as beginning teachers and as student teachers, most of your classes will be with years S1, S2 and S3. So how you teach the broad general education science actually makes a big difference. So once again, my name is Dr. Morag Findlay. Thank you for coming to our webinar about getting into physics teaching this afternoon. So if you do want to contact us, that's my email address. I'm happy to answer any email questions you might have after we've finished, or you can just contact our HAS PGDE inquiries team, who will get back to you very quickly and are very good and very efficient. And we've got some nice pictures there of the our halls of residence. I'm not entirely sure where the second picture is on. It would be the Rotten Row Gardens, which are nice. And as you see, we're number 4 for education in the UK, which we're very proud about. I think you'll see in the next slide, it's perhaps slightly different. It tends to bounce around a bit, but we're good at what we do and we enjoy working with students. So a quick bit of history. Jordan Hill, as it then was, has a history going right back to 1837. And then more recently, 1913, we moved out to the Jordan Hill campus, and that's where I did my teacher training, as it was then, rather than teacher education. And then in 1993, the next big change was becoming a faculty of education at the University of Strathclyde. And I certainly enjoyed the big change when we moved from being in Jordan Hill into the centre of the city. And I think the students enjoy that more now, because there's more opportunities for you to engage more widely in the life of the university. And from my point of view, it's absolutely fantastic, because in my office in level 5 of the Lord Hope building, I watched them build the sports centre literally next door. So if I want to go for a swim in the morning before I go to work, it's a 20-metre walk back from the office to that, which is good. So we also have alumni all over the world. This course won't just teach you how to teach in Scotland, it will teach you how to teach physics. And I think that's important. We're not tied to particular curriculum, although obviously the curriculum for excellence is a big part of what we do, but we want to educate you to be physics teachers so that you can actually go all over the world. And indeed, my first teaching job was teaching physics and mathematics in Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia. So literally, we go all over the world, and you'll see it's a slightly different ranking there, but it changes. So most of you by this stage should have finished your undergraduate degree or be about to finish your undergraduate degree. Then come to us for your professional graduate diploma in education for 10 months. That takes you to the provisional registration stage with the GTC, and you then move into the teacher induction scheme. Most students do that. So a guaranteed year of employment, and then if you complete that successfully, you go into full registration. But how we know that the teacher induction scheme doesn't suit everybody, so there's a flexible route. So some people, it suits them better to perhaps do supply or have jobs for 6 months at a time and achieve registration that way. Either way, you reach the standard and you become a teacher. So really, if you come to us starting in August 2021, you'll actually be going out into school as a provisionally registered teacher in August 2022, and then hopefully applying for your first teaching jobs in August 2023. So there's definitely a journey there. So the overview, I think that students often want to know, it's a 36-week course, so it's a lot longer than a lot of university courses. We start back in the middle of August, just after the schools have gone back generally. And it's 18 weeks on campus, 18 weeks in the placement schools. If you ask the students what's the best bit, they'll say it's being in school. Even this strange COVID year, students much prefer being in school than being in campus. And that's how it should be. You're doing this because you want to teach, you want to spend the time in school with young people. So that's absolutely fine. The student placement system, which I will come back, you're allocated to 2 different schools. The university doesn't do the allocation. It's the General Teaching Council for Scotland who do that. And I'll come back to that again later on. And we're accredited by the General Teaching Council for Scotland, the GTCS, like all of the teacher education institutions in Scotland. You wouldn't expect anything else. Now this, if you join us in the coming year, this would be the 2nd year of the new course. And the difference, one of the differences with this new course is you can actually get all 120 credits at master's level, but I'll come back to that later on. So it gives you a good foundation to go forward into master's level study if that's what you choose to do. And teacher education is generally moving in that direction. So as you can see, we have 3 big chunks, if you like, in the course. We have educational studies and professional values. You're probably very aware that education is small p political. It's something that politicians of all parties are interested in. It's because that's where they're discussing values. And our education system in any country reflects the values of the country. So we want you to look at that wider big picture stuff. It's not just about being a teacher of physics, it's being a teacher of physics and children in the context of what's education in Scotland, what's education in a wider sense, so that you're aware of that. And you'll see that professional skills, that's basically what we're calling the curriculum and pedagogy model, which is physics teaching, and also professional practice, which feeds in from the educational studies, professional values, and professional learning through inquiry. One of the things that education more generally is happening now is we want teachers to be reflecting more on their own practice to improve it. And that's about that professional learning through inquiry. And I think this is the first year we've done it this way, and I think the students have really enjoyed it. And their assessment for that's actually an academic poster and a bibliography. So there's all sorts of interesting things going on there. Education studies was assessed through a standard essay, and then curriculum and pedagogy, where it's about the teaching of physics, which we'll come back to later on, was meant to be assessed through a presentation, but all of the COVID changes have meant this year that we've had to do it differently, and it will now be an essay asking you to reflect on teaching. So I think we're flexible and we can adapt to the changing situations with the best interests of our students at heart. And then the professional practice bit right at the bottom there is where on a Thursday afternoon, you would have me this year in a class where we try and bring all these things together and start to think, what's the wider picture of education, professional learning through inquiry, your curriculum and pedagogy, your physics teaching, how does that all come together? And how do you integrate your thinking about that to prepare you to go out into school? So that's what we're at there. So course content, physics with science. As I said, you probably end up teaching mostly broad general education science in S1 to S3. So for 2 weeks on the course, what we do is we put you into mixed subject groups, physics, chemistry, biology, and we blitz the general science part of that. You would come in on a Tuesday and a Friday, and depending on how many groups we have, you'll have a big input about if you're a physicist, how do you teach biology? What are the tricky topics? How do you teach chemistry? That sort of idea. But obviously, as potential physics teachers, you're more interested in what are the challenges of teaching physics. And my colleague Paul Chambers and I, for us, the big 3 things in physics that are tricky are energy, forces, and electricity. And I hope I'm getting a wee wry smile from there. Hopefully you like some of them and you find bits of it challenging. So what we do is we would look at, well, what are the challenges of teaching that from S1 to S6? Because those topics go all the way through the physics course, like the names through a stick of rock, and they're there. So you need to be considering that. How do you change thinking about your understanding of physics at your level to something that's appropriate for physics at first year level, second year, third year? How do you persuade your first, second and third years that they want to choose physics in fourth and fifth year? And all of that sort of thing. So we think about that. So we look at the topics and how you would teach them across a range of ages, but also that's obviously set within the context of the National 4 and 5 physics exams and the higher and advanced higher physics exams. So we would look at all of that. So what we do is we work very hard with you, getting you to think about how can I teach this in a pragmatic way that's also research informed and pays attention to what we know about how children learn. And I think if you ask the physics students this year, they would say that the thing they most enjoy is actually the physics part of it, which again is what you would hope. So the placements are in 2 different schools. So how they're split up varies from year to year, but school A would be before Christmas. This year the students did get out, they were lucky with that. We couldn't go out and visit them, it had to be different. And then school B is sort of 4 weeks, I think, before Easter and 6 weeks after Easter, or 5 and 5. It tends to vary from year to year. So we do not allocate you to the schools. That's the GTCS student placement system. And you need to be aware that in the student placement system, you can be asked to travel up to an hour and a half by public transport to get to your placement. We can't ask for the placements to be changed unless, unfortunately, you've been asked to travel 2.5 hours each way, which is just too much. So, but I think students really value being in one school and then in a different school and having the chance to see how does being in a different school, how does being in a different physics department change how your pupils are and how they react and how you interact with them, and starting to think about things like that. So I think one of the, as I said, the thing that the students most enjoy is being out in the school placement, and that's what it should be. So everybody always wants to know about assessment. So placement experience, that's the big one, if you like. So what happens is, obviously, when you're in school, you're with the department all the time, you're with your teachers all the time. So they're seeing how you're teaching and how you're getting on. So they have a huge input into that, as it should be, because they're seeing you all the time and they're helping you and mentoring you through. But what will then happen is that in some form or another, a tutor will come out and visit the school. The previous placement, unfortunately, it had to be entirely electronic, but we managed that and we changed and adapted and were flexible. And we'll look at that. And part of what you're being asked to do in terms of your placement is, on every placement, you complete a professional practice file where you're keeping a record of your lesson plans. You're reflecting on how well did I teach that? How would I change it? And we very much encourage you to say what went well, because most students would say, oh, this didn't go well and that didn't. True, and you need to get there. But the most important thing is that you're kind to yourself and you recognise what your strengths are as a teacher so you can develop them and build on them. So we do that. And the change to 120 credits in the Masters is that if you want to get Masters credits for your placement experience, you would write a fairly long 4,000 word, I think it is, reflective assignment to show that you're thinking about your teaching at Masters level. If you don't want to do that, that's absolutely fine. It's an option, but I think this year, I think a lot of the teachers will probably take that up. And then assessment of the other modules, well, as you'd expect, we actually have a variety. I said that the professional learning through inquiry module is being assessed through an academic poster. Module 1, professional studies, was assessed through a fairly traditional assignment. And what we hope to do with the curriculum and pedagogy, in your case physics, is to assess it through a presentation. And while I think you might think that's a wee bit daunting, the people you're presenting to, you've worked with them for most of the year by that point, and they know what it's like to be teaching in front of a class and reflecting on it. And I think generally the students actually like that part of it. So there's a variety of things, but the good news is there's no exams. And I think that's quite often a relief. And I think sometimes, particularly physics and STEM students, worry about writing at that sort of academic level. But I actually do a big introduction to the whole PGDE cohort about academic writing. And basically, I would argue that if you think about how, say, some newspapers as disparate as the Daily Mirror and the Daily Express or the Telegraph would think about particular topics, they take different points of view. And you know that they take different points of view. So if you can see and make sense of the different approaches of the different newspapers to whatever the topic of the day is, you can do the academic reading and writing. And one of the things that my colleague Paul and I like about marking physics students' assignment is you tend to stick very much, here's the rubric, you answer it, and you do well. There's no evidence that you do any better or worse than, say, the English or the history students. So don't worry about whatever the assessment is. Physics students do it well. Now, point 3 there, coursework and attendance. Because this is a professional course, you have to meet the minimum attendance requirements. And if you can't meet them, you won't actually be able to complete the course successfully. We've had 1 or 2 students who, for various COVID-related reasons or other health-related reasons, haven't quite managed to complete their placements, but that will be addressed later on, and there's still an option to complete the course. And so be aware of that. We do take attendance. We do expect you to be there and contribute, but it's one of the beauties of the course and one of the joys of the course. So I'd said physics students don't tend to have a problem answering questions at master's level, but if you decide you want to do a diploma or sort of senior honours level, that's absolutely fine. The choice is up to you. You'll still get the PGDE. But as I said, there is the option to get those 120 credits towards the 180 you need for a master's degree. So you're well along the road if that's what you decide to do later on. Quite often with physics students, wonder if, could I teach maths as well, or possibly chemistry? Absolutely. If you're accepted onto the course for physics, what will happen is when you join us in August, my colleague John Winter, who's the maths tutor, would then contact you and say, if you're interested in maths, let him know and he'll check you have enough mathematics in your degree, which we'll come on to that in a wee bit more. So this year, I think we have about six of the physics students are doing physics and maths, and I think one of them is doing physics and chemistry. So there's various options there. And yes, if you finish the PGDE year with us and then in school, that you'd get full registration in both. So I'm sure you know about the entry requirements. I'm not going to spend too much time on them. Set by the General Teaching Council for Scotland, you need your degree, so that's done. Your degree's got to contain at least 80 credits relevant to physics. My colleague Paul and I and the admissions team spend quite a lot of time checking your transcript. So if you have an engineering degree, has it got enough physics to qualify? So we're looking for electricity, electronics and mechanics as the bare minimum. Most mechanical engineering degrees have enough electrical engineering in them to be successful. Electrical engineering degrees can be a bit trickier. However, if you've got at least 50 relevant credits, it's possible to top up, and we would give you guidance about that. And every year we have students who apply. They've either done 20 credits in electricity or mechanics at a local college, or we would recommend one of the second level open university modules, which is another possibility. So even if you feel at the moment, oh gosh, I don't think I've got quite enough physics in my degree, we're very happy to work with you and see, is it possible for you to top up? What are your options for that? So if you feel you're in that position, please contact us and we'll try and give you advice. The other thing I think that can sometimes be a little bit problematic for physics candidates is the higher English at grade C or above or equivalent. And we regularly suggest that students go to a local college and either do the 2 modules that are equivalent to higher English, or do higher English if there's more time. So again, if you feel you're not quite there with higher English, that's not a problem. We can work with you to see how you do that. We don't tend to bother too much about the maths qualification because, quite frankly, if you've got a physics degree, you've got enough maths. We do occasionally get applications from people with a physics studies degree, which is physics with no maths, and we wouldn't take that because there's so much maths involved in teaching physics. But again, if you feel you're in that position, please talk to us about it. The third last bullet point there, I've put in brackets about experience working with children. In an ideal world, yes, either in school or you've worked with the Scouts or the Girl Guides, the Girls Brigade, Boys Brigade, whatever. It's some sort of experience working with children. We would still probably interview you if you don't have that, but it makes life easier for you if you know what some of the challenges are about working with children, and then think about, well, how might these more informal settings be different to working in the more formal setting of a school? So, you know, if it's good if you get some experience working with children or tutoring, because it gives you the chance to say, actually, yeah, I think teaching is the thing for me. So that's worth doing. Understanding modern education, we don't expect you to be experts, but we expect you to have some idea about it and what are some of the challenges and changes. And clearly, teaching, you're working with people all day. You need to be able to relate to people. But people do that in their own way. My style is very different to my colleague's style. Every teacher is different. We'll suggest different ways and different models for you to do it. But at the end of the day, it's for you to decide what's the best way to do that. Right, so the process, I know it says it closes, the UCAS system closes on the 15th of January, not for physics. I was interviewing people in August last year to start in about 2 days' time. I even interviewed somebody the day the course started. So we're very open in physics to having late applications. If you can apply earlier, it's better for you and for us, mainly for you, but we will accept later applications. And if you're an international student, you need to apply through our internal Pegasus system, but you'll find details about that elsewhere. And again, if you do decide to apply, please send us your documentation as soon as possible, proof of your higher English, higher maths, and your degree. We might need to ask you for your degree transcript depending on your degree, but that's absolutely fine. And then my colleague Paul and I are in the process of interviewing people. If you've got the basic physics qualifications, the basic English qualifications, we will ask you for an interview, and then it's up to you. So have a think about how you would want to be and act in the interview, but you'll get more guidance about that later on. And we would make a decision on the day about whether to accept you or reject you, and it then goes through our processes, which you'll understand are a wee bit slower at the moment with COVID, but generally we would expect you to find out whether you've been successful or not within about 10 days. So it really goes quite quickly. And then fees and funding, Scottish students, Scottish Student Award Agency Scotland, look on their website, International EU, rest of the UK. Again, check out whether there are options, what the tuition fees would be, and whether there are scholarships, because we're very keen to get people and not to have money being an issue. So that's the support and the funding there. And I think lots of useful FAQs, frequently asked questions at the general PGDE teacher education page, and there's a specific physics page there as well. As I said to you earlier, I'm quite happy if you email me. I'll get back to you as soon as I can, or email admissions or an admissions officer. So thank you for your time and attention. We're delighted to see you and offer you an interview if you meet the criteria. So I'm going to stop the share now and see if I can ask my colleague Leah to come back in, because I think she's looking at she's got the question and answer. So that's brilliant, Leah.
Hi everyone. Well, I'm saying my dog has been as good as gold, and just now, as you ended the presentation, he needs me to let him out the door. So give me just 1 second. I'm so sorry.
Right, no problem. So if you put questions in the chat, that's brilliant. If you still have questions to add, please do. I can't see the Q&A, so Leah will help me with that. So
yes, hello.
So either I'll answer your question or Leah will answer your question, depending on how it goes. So over to you for the moment then, Leah.
Yes, so thank you very much for your presentation, Morag. That was very helpful. I hope everyone that joined us today has found that helpful. So we've not got any questions yet, but we'll just give it a couple of minutes and see if anyone wants to drop us a question after they've listened to the presentation. Please don't be shy. Come in and chat to us. We're happy. We've got plenty of time to answer lots of questions. So if you've maybe got a question about anything that Morag's just talked about, if you've got a question about your situation, entry requirements, etc., we can have a little chat about that. If you want to pop a question into the Q&A box, it's just down the bottom of the screen, just in case anyone doesn't know. It's like 2 little speech bubbles and says Q&A. Just type something into us there and we can answer questions.
Sorry, I think one thing I should have said but didn't was that what's tended to happen this year is that the physics classes would either run on a Tuesday or a Friday. And this year, if you were doing physics and maths, you would come to physics on sorry, my clock's now chiming, you would come to physics on a Tuesday and go to maths on a Friday. So you'd have quite a full-on week. And because we have this extra time in physics with science and so on, we have not extra classes, but classes on a Thursday, which were planned to be blended learning before COVID. They're getting you thinking about that sort of wider science and broad general education science as well. So it is a very full-on course, but I think it's very doable and the vast majority of students enjoy it.
Absolutely. Still not got any questions, but we'll keep this open just now, just in case anyone does have a question.
Yep, no problem.
Finding a lot of people are.
Oh, there's a question.
Oh, here we go. Who am I best to contact to check an engineering degree transcript to ensure that I have the correct number of relevant credits, through yourself or HASC? So if you would like, Amber, you can send your transcript over to us and we would have a first glance at it. So I work within the admissions team. So we would have a quick look at it, and if there was anything that we weren't sure about or we needed further information from, we would go to Morag or her colleague Paul and ask them to have a double check, and we can look at it together. otherwise, and we might need a wee bit more information from you, such as a module descriptor or something like that. But generally, we can tell from your transcript if you want to send that into us. So you should be able to ask your university for that, or if you're studying right now, you should be able to go on to your virtual learning environment. You can usually just pull it off there. So our virtual learning environment is called My Place, but for some other people it's Blackboard or Moodle, and you should be able to pull it off of there. If not, you might have to email your university and ask for a wee copy of that, and then you can fire that over to us whenever you have it. So I'm just going to type the address to you so that you have it written down. Sometimes that's easier just to...
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be, if you're at Strathclyde, it would be the Pegasus system that would give you your, not quite the trans, but I mean, it's, we use My Place and Pegasus almost interchangeably, so.
Yes, sorry, of course it would be Pegasus, wouldn't it? So, but hopefully, yeah, if you email that to us, we'll be happy to check that over. Yeah.
I mean, I think you and your colleagues, Leah, had sent Paul and myself, I think we've had 3 or 4 this afternoon, because it's obviously the time for processing the physics ones. And, you know, we're quite happy to do that. And we do recommend either, I think most people, to be honest, if you did need to top up, the easiest thing to do is probably, there's an Open University second year module called From Classical to Quantum, or it might be Quantum to Classical, they keep changing the name. It is 60 credits, which is more than you would need, but it's probably the simplest way to get the credits. Although if you're applying well enough in advance, you could probably try and get them at a local college as well. But if you did that, we would ask that you checked with us just so that you're, you know, that it's something that's suitable. It's not likely to be unsuitable, but I think it's just worth checking for your own peace of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing with the Open University is you can study it a wee bit more flexibly as well. So if you're maybe working just now, or maybe you're studying, then you can generally do them in your own time.
So the other advantage of the Open University one, although it's 60 credits, it does cover sort of the whole of physics. So it actually gives you kind of, you know, it's almost like a refresher. Because again, I think one of the things that students often worry about is, well, what about that bit of physics I didn't get, or I've forgotten, it's been a long time since I've studied. Well, quite honestly, that's the same for everybody. So it's a case of, if you need to go and, you know, mug up on something, go and do it, and then we'll discuss it. But again, we would offer you support with that. Pardon me.
Great. So we've had another question in a similar vein to that. So Julie is asking, I haven't attended university in 20 years. How do mature students find the course?
I think it's a bit of a culture shock initially, but it's very doable. And when I studied physics teaching, I was 26 and I was quite old. I was probably one of the oldest people in the class, because it was mostly people who just graduated. Whereas now, if you've not studied for 20 years, you're probably, you know, you would be in about the middle. We have a wide range. We've got, I think this year we have 3 students who are doing the undergraduate physics with teaching qualification. So obviously they're in their early 20s, and we've got people in their 40s and 50s. So a bit of a shock to the system, but it is doable. And I think, you know, the advantage, I think, if you're a bit older, is that you've got that life experience and you bring that, and you know, this is what I want to do, and you've got that drive, and you will succeed. The vast majority of people who start the course, if they want to finish it, will finish it. There's always 1 or 2 people decide it's not for them. I know that seems an odd thing to talk about at a recruitment event, but if it's not for you, you don't enjoy it, don't do it. But the vast majority of students love it. It's not to say they wouldn't have the odd bad day. I mean, it's like any job. But I think that chance to work with young people and with us on campus in a supportive environment. So yeah, I think if you doesn't matter your age, if you want to get to the end of the course, you will. Some people sometimes don't, for, you know, personal circumstances, but we've certainly in the past had 1 or 3 or 4 people who've said, no, it's not for me just now, and then they've come back in a couple of years and succeeded and passed the course. So we know that sort of life events happen, so we're open to being flexible and supporting students with that as well.
Absolutely. I think across the board, you know, not just in physics, though, the PGDE programme in general does attract a lot of mature students. We do get a lot of applications. So, you know, it's not just, don't be sitting there thinking that you would be the only one, you know, maybe in your class or across that board. And there are plenty of networks within the university, you know, within like clubs and societies. Like mature students have their own sort of forum where they can go and chat to each other and support each other. There are there is support out there if you'd like it, or if you want the chance to meet maybe some more people that are your own age, etc. on the course. You will find that they're there. They might not necessarily be in the physics class, but as Morag's already said, you get lots of interaction with the chemistry students and the biology students and the maths students and beyond that. So there is lots of opportunities for you to work together.
I mean, certainly in the sort of professional learning education studies, that's big, 50 or 60 of you in a big tutorial room. And I know that sounds, gosh, how can we deal with that? But actually, I think it works well because it's a mixture of secondary subjects, primary students, and you're getting that cross-fertilisation and a chance to work with people right across the range of the course. So don't feel you'd be stuck in your wee physics silo. You won't be. You'll get a chance to work with an awful lot of people on the course. And I think that's one of the benefits.
Definitely, I think as well, you mentioned earlier that it attracts students from all over the world because the PGDE is a global, it can be taken globally to teach anywhere. So that's another benefit of the course, that you get to meet people from lots of diverse backgrounds.
This year we've got an Omani student, an American student, a Turkish student, a Czech student, and an Italian, and I'm sure I'm missing somebody. So, and there's about 36 students. So we've got a wide variety of students from nationalities and ages. And I think it's very refreshing to get a view from somebody who's come through a different education system, because it makes you reflect on the Scottish system.